Good morning everyone, welcome to our small footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a large family living off-grid in Australia. I have a bunch of different things that really badly need doing, and I have the kids brought a cold home, so I've got a head cold, which is great. We've had some major issues with some sickness running through some chickens, so we're nursing chickens in brooders, and it's been, but I really need to get some of this produce sorted before it goes off, otherwise it's all a waste. And one of my biggest pet peeves is food wastage. It is a massive thing for me. So what I need to do first is the salsa. Caramelized onion jam is one of the next things. And there was something else too. But salsa, we'll start with salsa. So I go really simple salsa, a basic traditional salsa. I like it with lime juice and just a hint of ACV, apple cider vinegar. I don't like to do too much vinegar. And I do a pretty basic, minimal onion, minimal chilies, and lots of tomato. So we're going to start off with tomatoes, and I use my Thermomix because I am lucky to have one. And I rough dice my tomatoes in the Thermomix. I don't peel them, I don't do anything but take a core out, rough dice them, and get them in a pot. That is how we like our salsa, and I love this salsa. It is amazing how fresh it still tastes even after it's been canned. It tastes like fresh tomatoes, and that is just the way we adore it. So we're going to get started with tomatoes. So I've got my first bag of tomatoes out to get started. Instead of just turning the camera, I accidentally turned it off, so we missed that chunk, and I'll have to repeat myself, but we've started on cutting. So in regards to the tomatoes, all I do is I quarter them and take the cores out. So we're just taking the big cores out. Some of these tomatoes are a little bit green. It's not such a big deal because it makes them nice and firm. It may mean that I need to add a touch sugar. We'll see what the flavour is, see how acidic it is. But the fact that some of them are green just gives a nice firmness to it. So some of them have some big scarring on the skins, and I am taking that off. There's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly edible. But because it's going into a salsa where it's just diced up and really quickly cooked, then you don't want those scars, because it can just cause some texture issues, and you just don't want to do that. So the combination of the nice green tomatoes with the nice fresh ones gives you good flavour, good texture. And then if we just take that scarring off as well, just to make sure that there's no imperfections in the skin, because I'm leaving the skin on and we only sort of turbo it. So what I have found is that, generally speaking, a full Thermomix bowl of quartered and cored tomatoes like this ends up being around about the 7 cups of diced tomato. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill this jug up. I will turbo it a few times like you would in a food processor, and then I will measure it into the pot that I'm going to cook it in. So we cook the salsa briefly, only for like 15 minutes. You just want to bring it up to a boil and hold it there for a couple of minutes, and that's enough, and then you can it from there. So we're going to get all of these in there, get everything else in there, and then bring it up to a boil briefly and hold it. So I will get this filled, and then I'll turbo it, and I'll bring you back to show you the texture of it going into the pot. I'm not sure how big a pot we're going to need, so I'm going to start off with the biggest one, because it's always easier to do that than to have to size up. So what I need is a measuring cup. Alright, so we've got texture here that is a bit, I've done well there, a bit like this. So chunky and just all over the place. There'll be some pieces that don't get turboed up, and all I do is I pull them out and put them in the next batch. So we want this sort of a all over the place texture, some big bits, some small bits. Anything too big, as I said, I pull out. But some of the bigger skin bits are nice in the texture of the salsa as well. But we did manage to not measure this properly, didn't we? Lucky my hands are clean. 2, 3, 4, 5. So mine have got 6 cups out of this actually. So we'll work on 6. That way there'll be a margin of error on that as well. So we'll work on 6 cups of tomato for a full jug. And then I'm just pulling any of the really big bits out, and we'll turbo them and put them in as well. So that's all we're doing, is we're just going to fill this pot with as many jugs as I can get, and then we will go from there. Alright, we have approximately 42 cups of diced tomato. Now I say approximately, but approximately that will be less than what we've got. So we've got at least 42 cups of diced tomato in here, probably a bit more. I just went through my freezer. I was sure I had some jalapenos frozen from last year to use in this, and I couldn't find them, not without pulling the entire freezer apart, and I'm really just not bending over with a head cold. It's not much fun. I was talking about how these tomatoes probably won't be super sweet because some of them were a bit green. What I might try with this batch is I have cowboy candy. So this is jalapenos diced up in a sugar syrup. What I might do is try using some of this, maybe some chili flakes. We'll have a taste of it and see how we go. First I need to get some onions. So because there's 42 odd cups, we've got 6 times the recipe. These onions are really small, so all I'm going to do is use 3 onions for this batch, and we are not huge fans of big chunks of onion, so I am going to dice them in the Thermomix as well. Personal preference, you can have them in whatever shape or size that you would like them, but the salsa is very fresh, and there's a lot of bite to it, so I find that the onion, if it's in big pieces, you get the big crunches of what feels like raw onion, and that's just not to my taste, but it really depends on your preferences there. So we're going to do that. I need to grab some garlic. I'll grab some of the frozen diced garlic that I've got, and we want sort of 1 to 2 cloves per 7 cups, so we want 6 to 12 cloves worth. So let me grab that. Alright, I had to go into the other freezer to get the garlic, and I did find some red chilies. Now I have a bag of these red chilies that I had kept aside to make sweet chili sauce. As a side note, we're also out of sweet chili sauce. So I'm just going to put some of those in there, but they were mystery chilies from the hamper, so I don't know how hot they are. So I've put about 3 of those in there, and we will see how it goes. I can always add some of the cowboy candy as well. Now that we've got some diced garlic that is just diced, frozen raw, and these were the elephant garlic, so they're it's a mild-ish garlic, so I'm just going to put 3 scoops of that in there and dice this up. Way we'll get all the flavour, but not necessarily any significant chunks, which is how we prefer it. You get some larger pieces, some smaller pieces. It works out well. So we're going to throw all this in here as well. We get some small pieces, some large pieces. Yeah, this is the way that I like to do it. And all that will permeate the whole salsa. All right. So all that in there. Okay. Now we need some lime juice. Alright, I've got 8 frozen cubes here. Each one of these, I believe, is 15 or 20 mils, so they're almost a tablespoon each. So we've got 8 tablespoon-ish of lime juice. I will add some apple cider vinegar as well if we need to bump that acidity a little bit. We're going to add some salt. And again, we can add that to taste. So long as the ratio of the low acid ingredients, which is your onions and stuff, are well ratioed to your tomatoes, nothing else is a necessary addition. So we will look at adding some of this cowboy candy, but I'll leave that for this moment. We'll get this turned on and going, and then we will go from there. So, all right, while that is simmering, I kept some of these little tiny firm tomatoes out to use because we had enough to have excess, but I am going to make a quick frittata for lunch. So we've got plenty of eggs at the moment, so I'm going to quickly fine dice up some bacon and some onion and cook that off, and then I will put a tin of corn with it, maybe a dozen eggs, bit of cream or milk, and a cup of cheese, that sort of thing. Super simple. Just make a 12 egg frittata for lunch. So I'm just going to fry this off a little bit, and I'm going to use some diced tomato as well. I won't cook that. I'll mix that in raw, but I'm going to fry let me grab some onion. Just dice up an onion nice and fine as well, so that we can fry these off for the frittata. Alright, so I'll fry this off and then I'll show you the quick frittata. Pizza has been requested for dinner tonight too, so I need to make some pizza dough up. I didn't hit record again. I don't know what I was doing. Bacon, onion, garlic is in the bottom, all crisped up. Poured the egg, sour cream, corn, cheese mix over the top. Laid out some tomatoes, going in the oven. This is lunch, so. Frittata done. The salsa has simmered and is fine. Now I just have to wash jars. One of the kids collected jars for me. I just have to wash the jars to put it in the jars. I haven't done the pizza dough yet, and I just realised, so I need to mix that up. But this is the frittata done for lunch. Alright, so I've got jars here. I think I'm going to need more. Darryl's going to wash some more for me. So what I do with the salsa is that I don't drain the liquid off at any point when I'm cooking it. What I do now is I use a perforated spoon to scoop it in there, and that gets plenty of liquid for each one. And that way they're still moist in the jars, but it's not excessive amounts of liquid. So all I do is put the, I'm going to make a mess just to show closest to the camera, but holy spoon, couple of scoops in is all it requires, and I'll use my packing stick to debubble these as well. There'll be a little bit more in that, I'd imagine, but that means that there's plenty of liquid in there, but it's not overly wet. I did end up leaving this on the stove a bit longer than I would have liked. So some of the skins have done that little curly straw thing, which is vaguely unfortunate, but there's lots of texture in salsa anyway, so those little bits of texture things that aren't real great don't really stand out as much because it's not smooth anyway. So I'm just going to go through, fill all the jars, I'll debubble them, and then I'll see how many I end up with. Build this many, you're going to do the normal vinegar around the rims of the jars to clean them up. Can you grab me some of the large black lids in the bag there? Actually, I think there's a bag under here. Can you grab this bag under here for me? It's already open. So just got some vinegar, cleaning the rims of them all because I carried the spoon across a lot of them, and then I will grab out my new lids and I will run some vinegar over them as well because they've been open under my bench. So we're just going to make sure that there's no bits of tomato that can interfere with the seal anywhere. It's not greasy, so that's not a big deal. We just want to make sure there's no actual chunks of tomato. Then the lids, I'll do the same. I'll run some vinegar around the inside of them just to make sure that they're clean. Place them on, and I'm going to put these in the pressure canner to steam can so that I can do multiple layers of them. And they only take 15 minutes, and then they will be done and ready to go on the shelf for the next however long it is that we eat them for. It lasts quite a while, which is why I sort of didn't realise that we'd run out. But we tend to go through phases sometimes too of eating chips and salsa quite regularly, and then we don't for a while. So, and the kids pull it off the shelf too, which means that I don't necessarily know that we've run out unless a child tells me or I go looking for some for myself. And then this is the last 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. So I don't remember how many we put in the counter. I have to check. But this is all of it. There is still plenty of liquid with some little chunks left in it, and every time I make salsa I run into the problem of wanting to use that liquid but not really having anything to use it on. So like you can cook rice in it, you can add it to pasta sauces and all that sort of thing, but last time I canned up the liquid and I think it's still sitting on the stove, on the shelves, because I just don't think to use it. It's just not something that I normally use, so I'll have a think about it and decide what I want to do. But for the moment I'm going to put these in the steam canner on the racks as well. So we've got 27 jars all up, and they're 3 layers. So we're going to get the canner on, we will bring it up to a steady stream of steam, the vent will pop, and then we'll do a timer for 15 minutes and then it will be done. So no weight on it because we're steam canning it. We just want that steady stream of steam, which means that it's under steam inside the cavity, and the valve pops up, which means that it's in all the oxygen's out of it. And yeah, 15 minutes and then that will be done and be put on the shelf. Apollo is my rice eater, so I asked him if he'd like to try some red rice done in salsa water, and he said yes. So I was going to put 4 litres aside to do a big batch of rice, and we can always freeze it in portions and he can use it later. But there was an incident. A whole 2 litres got spilt all over my floor. One of the boons of being outside, I've hot washed it and swept it all off the edge of the deck. But anyway, so we've got 2 litres, which is fine. I'll make him some rice up with that in the next couple of days. I'm just going to stick that in the fridge. Next thing I'm going to do, since I'm sitting here waiting for the steam cannon to finish and stuff anyway, is I'm going to cut up a whole bunch of apples and stick them in a pot. So I'm going to put this in the fridge first. All right, now as I said about the apples, they've been left out too long out of the fridge, and some of them are a bit gross. So all I'm going to do is core them and throw them in the pot. Now I don't peel. I literally just take the cores out and cut them up into chunks and throw them in a pot. We will see how much we end up with that is still usable, because we've got some that have some significant damage to them, unfortunately. So we're just going to work around the damage and keep any pieces that are clean as we can. But yes, these were left out, so we're working around some bad spots. So all I'm going to do is check them all over, get as many as I can that are usable, throw them all in a pot, and then I'll bring you back. Just one sec. Giant pot of apple. I'm just going to put a little bit of sugar in this and turn it on low, put a lid on it and let it go. The boys washed and sorted apples for me, and Kavik helped me cut them up. So this is what we have left from what was good in the boxes, and they will be great for the purpose that we're using them for. So most of this big pot full, I'm just, as I said, I'm going to add some sugar just for, now this is being used for barbecue sauce, so it doesn't need to be ratioed for, like if I was going to use it as actual apple butter, but we will use some sugar just to help it break down and brown up and stuff. So just going to do that, put it on, let it create its own juices and cook down. Alright, so we've got all the good cores in some clean jars. I'm going to turn these into apple scrap vinegar. Now, realistically, there's probably a bit too much. I just had a fly into this one. Get out. Alright, realistically, it's probably a bit more apple than needs to be in each jar to do this. Kavik could probably find me 2 more of these, and I could probably do 4 of them. 2 more of these jars. And split that again, because you don't want too much apple. You want sort of like 100 grams per litre-ish is what the standard ratio is. You want enough water in there to do it. And then we've got some sugar. I also kept apple cider vinegar the other day when I was cooking something. I mentioned that there was a mother in there, so I'm going to split that in between. I'm going to cut it and put a portion in each one, which will just help to kickstart the process of it all. So we'll get another couple of jars. We'll split this up. I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of sugar in each jar, and then a quarter of this mother, and fill them up with filtered water. And then we're just going to put a cloth on top, or a coffee filter or something on top to keep everything out of it. And it will sit for, I don't know, a week. We'll see how it bubbles and stuff, see how things go. It's pretty warm at the moment, so it may not need very long. So then we will have apple scrap vinegar to use for cooking and stuff. The acidity of this, the pH of this, is not appropriate for using as a canning agent for something that it relies on the vinegar for the canning. You can use it for things that it's only flavour in, but for the stuff that requires the acidity of it for canning, you can't use it. So keep that in mind. It is more a flavour vinegar, eating vinegar, not to be used as a canning vinegar. All right, so we're just going to split these. All right, so I've split it into the 4 here. I've got the mother that I'm going to, I'm just going to, oop, I didn't want to throw the mother in there. Oh, my hands are too big to fit in. There we go. So we've got the SCOBY. So I'm going to cut that into 4 pieces and put a little bit in each one. A little bit of SCOBY in each jar. And then grab a tablespoon. All right. I only found a dessert spoon, so we're going to do 4 of these in each jar to help kickstart. And now I'm just going to top them all up with filtered water, and then we'll put a coffee filter over the top. I'll bring you back. Right, I have some cheesecloth for each of these and an elastic band, so I'm just going to do that. And each one of these will sit for a week or however long. I'll keep an eye on them. I'm making sure that SCOBY is down. Ideally, the cores would be weighted with something, but I just don't really have anything suitable for this because of the amount of open space. Like, I have weights, but if I put a weight in there, it's just going to flop down because of the negative space of liquid. So that's not going to work. So we'll just keep an eye on it, and I'll assess as I go. Apple scrap vinegar is one of those things that sometimes is super easy, super hands-off, and it just works, and other times, no matter what you seem to do, you have a fail. So it's fine. The animals will consume it otherwise, and it's good for them. So even if it doesn't quite turn into something that I want to use, the chickens will eat it, and it'll be really good for their guts. So that is done now. The apples are in the pot, cooking down, and they will cook for hours and hours. So that will be a tomorrow job to turn that into the barbecue sauce. So for the moment, that is it from me, and we will see what comes next. All right, next morning, apple butter has been in the fridge. I'm going to puree it. I didn't do it last night, so I'm just going to use an immersion blender and puree it up. I'm wondering if it'd be better to transfer it into my Thermomix because I left the skin on and stuff, and we want it nice and smooth. And this is just a Kmart immersion blender, so see how we go. Right. It's doing an okay job, but it's struggling. So what I think I might do is transfer it into my Thermomix. I kind of want to know how much I've got anyway. So if I transfer it into the Thermomix to puree up, and then I can measure it from the Thermomix into another bowl. So I'm going to give this a quick wash. I'm really happy with the consistency that it's gotten to just on the stove, considering I didn't pressure it at all. I just did some high temperatures and some low temperatures and watched it because I was already in the kitchen. I am quite happy with this. If I was making it as just apple butter, it would be quite good as is. Now, we don't use apple butter very much. I've still got a couple of jars on the shelf. I have used it in baking and stuff, but I did find that it wasn't something we used a whole lot of, whereas apple butter barbecue is definitely a favourite of mine. I would like to try a more classic barbecue at some point, but apple butter barbecue is very nice. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to puree it up, and then we're going to measure it out into another pot, I think. Though once I do the add-ins, it might still need to go back into this big pot. So we'll see how we go. I just did 20 seconds because I think that will be plenty. And yeah, look, perfectly smooth. Much smoother than I could have got it with the immersion blender. So we just want approximate measurements to base the sauce on. So that was for 5-ish cups. And I'm just going to keep going through and pureeing it all up until I get it all done and find out how much apple butter I ended up with. All right, so we ended up with about 30 cups in this batch, in this lot of apples. Now, I generally do a 40-cup batch. That's what I've got my notes for and everything. Now, as I said, I have some apple butter on the shelf from when I last made apple butter. And actually, that's barbecue sauce. That has already been turned into apple butter barbecue, and I just didn't realise, because that is very vinegary. So I did look at the colour and think it was a strange sort of a thing. I thought we had run out of apple butter barbecue, but it looks like we haven't. It's fine, because we will make more, but I assume that both of these are apple butter barbecue by the colour of them. I did look at it and think it was a bit strange. Let me just check if there was more apple butter. On me, there is like 8 jars of apple butter barbecue on the shelf. I just didn't realise, but I did find some apple butter, and so obviously this is a much better colour. So it is apple butter, and it says apple butter on top. On me, I obviously did not label the jars appropriately, and yeah, so let's get these. So apple butter from, and this is from quite a few years ago, so this is about 30. I've got 4 of these pints and a small half pint, which will bring it up to, there you go, date 3rd 2022, that these were canned, which is not an issue because they were canned appropriately and they're perfectly fine. So now we're just going to add this in, though I will need to upsize the pan, won't I? Can you grab me the spatula that I had before, mate? So yeah, that's on me for not labeling things appropriately, because yeah, I have apple butter barbecue that I could have been eating all this time and didn't even realise. So anyway, it's a good use of the apples, and it means that we will have it for a long time to come. So I'm just going to add the rest of these jars, which will bring it up to around about the 40 cup mark. And then I'll bring you back when I'm adding everything else. I wish I could find my little tool for... Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I'll get all these in here. I'll get this transferred back to the other pan, and I'll bring it back when I'm adding the rest of the ingredients. All right, so we've got the 40 cups of apple butter in here. Now, to that ratio of apple butter, we add 6 of the 700-ish gram bottles of passata, which we will use vinegar to rinse out because we have to add vinegar as well. Now, the apple butter is not quite as thick as apple butter could be, so it will require quite a bit of cooking down. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add everything, and then it's just going to simmer on the back of the stove for most of the day until it ends up really nice and thick. And then we will have to can it. It's easier to get into jars warm, but if I run out of time during the day, then I will just, it'll travel over to another day again. So we've got the 6 jars here. All right, so we're going to add about 7.5 cups of vinegar. Normally I would use all apple cider vinegar, but we've had sick chickens and I've used a lot of my apple cider vinegar up, so I might have to use some white as well. I just have to find what's left of the apple cider as well. First 2 cups of vinegar here, and it's a mix of the white and the apple cider, and what I'm going to use is use that to get the rest of the passata out of the bottles. So we've got 2 cups of vinegar so far, and we're just going to use that to clean out these bottles. Pardon?
Could you put apple butter barbecue in there?
It won't clean the jars out properly because it's too thick. Oh, put it in there for serving. You could, but it's not very easy to serve. You'd end up wasting some because you can't. Okay, another 2 cups of apple cider, which we'll use to clean the last 3 jars. 7.5 of vinegar. All right, now from that point we're going to add some spice and stuff. Let me wash my hands first. All right, we want about 1/2 cup of molasses. So we're going to add that in there. And then we're going to do 5 tablespoons of garlic powder, 5 tablespoons of smoked paprika, which Kavik wants to add. I'm also going to add some onion powder. My onion powder has caked up. I'm just going to add this much and crumble it in. Obviously this jar was not closed properly and hasn't been airtight, so just got some onion powder in there as well. Then we need some salt, so the flaked salt underneath the, use the flaked salt, the one in the big green tub, without knocking anything over, and 5 tablespoons of the flaked salt. Now we're going to add some sugar. Now, when I first made this many years ago, as I said, the apple butter last time was 2022, I looked up a bunch of different recipes to decide how I wanted to make it. Most of the recipes, I'll put a link to the one that was the inspiration for this. It had like, I want to say like 20 cups of sugar in it, like an excessive amount of sugar. And we don't eat a lot of heavily sweetened things. Like we eat lollies and stuff and they're supposed to be sweet, but when it comes to food and stuff, less so. So that kind of, the idea of that amount of sugar in a sauce was just wow. So I only use 5 cups. We've got those really sweet apples. We've got the passata. Yes, you've got the vinegar, which is, bumping the acidity and stuff like that. But really it just, that's all we need. I'm just going to guesstimate here because I can't find my measuring cups. So these are, let me not drop my sugar everywhere like I did last video. This is about 1.5 cups of sugar. 1.5 cups, 3, 4.5, 5-ish. And then I have some liquid smoke. Now, liquid smoke is a thing that is definitely to taste. And we use about 1 tablespoon in this amount, which is on the strong-ish side, but not overbearing. So I think that's it. Let me just check my notes. We used some pepper. Used about 1 tablespoon of pepper, but I can't use that tablespoon because I've now used it for wet, which is fine. I'm just going to put a generous few sprinkles in there. All right, so that is what we've got. So now we just need to mix it up and get it on the heat and let it simmer for a good amount of hours until it reduces and ends up really nice and thick, ready to be canned. I will taste it in a little bit once it's all had a chance to, the sugar to dissolve and everything else to emulsify a little bit. And then we will have it ready to go. So I'm just going to leave it on low, clean up after myself, and then I'll bring yours back once I'm tasting it and things like that. But yeah, I'm a bit frustrated. I didn't realize I had some on the shelf, but that's fine. It'll be used, in perpetuity. It is one of my favorite sauces. So there we go. All right, the sauce reduced by about half, so it's nice and thick. I'm going to just can it in quarts because basically I don't have a lot of pints and it's quicker to do it in quarts. I really like apple butter barbecue. It'll just be a matter of making sure that when we open one, it gets used. So I've got Ball Mason quart jars and some generic branded quart jars. They're all the same. They all use the same regular lids. So that's what I'm going to do. Darryl is washing some more for me and I'm just going to get started filling these jars with this lovely thick sauce. See if you can see the sauce there. It's pretty textured. I could thin it. I could blend it a little bit more if I wanted to, but we don't mind the little bit of texture. So I'm just going to fill to the shoulder of the jars, and we will go. Now I didn't add any more sugar, so only that 5 cups of sugar for this whole batch, which, as I said, is about 1/4 of what the recipe calls for. It's got a little bit of a tang to it, but it's a barbecue sauce. It's kind of supposed to. So we're happy with that. So I'm just going to fill as many quart jars as I can with it. And then I'll steam can these, same as the other stuff. Quart jars, probably, I don't know, probably 20 minutes. I'll have a look up, but probably 20-25 minutes for these. I'll have a look at what it needs, but it's a high acid sauce, so it just needs to be steam canned or water bath canned. So I'm just going to keep going and fill all the jars. All right, so I ended up with 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 quarts of the barbecue, which is pretty cool. Good use of those apples. So I'm just cleaning the rims with some white vinegar. Now, oops, I just dangled that in there. Ball mason jars, so that top rim is the really important point, and it's a good, when you're cleaning the rims like this, is a good time to double check that there's no chips in that top section, because that's where your seal is. So if there's any chips in that top surface, it will stop your jars from sealing properly. So when you're doing this, it's a good time to just run your finger over it and double check that there's no issues with the rim of the jar. And then we have our lids and our rings. Now, these are ball mason jars, so unlike our lug lid jars, we only tighten them fingertip tight. So we use our fingers, not the whole heel of our hand, so that is how tight they go. So that's all I'm doing. And then I believe I can double stack these in my buffalo canner. I'm hoping, otherwise I have to pull 2 canners out, and I hate doing that at this time of night, because it is already 4:30, because the day has just got away from me a little bit. So we as usual. Now I've got the water in the canner warming up because the sauce is warm. It's not overly hot because I got sidetracked, but it is warm. So we want the water in the canner to start off at the same temperature as the contents of the jar. So we've got that warming up, and then I will put them in the, this one is not going on properly for some reason, and then we will put them in the warm water and hopefully stack them. So that's some pretty nice looking barbecue sauce, if I do say so myself, and it'll be so nice to have on the shelf. So there is, I mentioned there was some generic and some standard balls, so there's some different heights slightly in here of the different brands, so I'll just have to take that into account when these generic ones are slightly squatter, and so they're a little shorter. So if I'm going to stack them, I just need to be aware of that when I'm putting them in the canner to make sure that they're all the same height on each layer. There's a little bit sauce left here, but not enough for a whole quart, so I'm just going to put that into a twist top jar to put in the fridge. And yeah, that's done for the apple butter barbecue. I don't think there was anything else that needed to be added to this video. I think this is it for this video. So let me get these in here in the canner, and then I will finish out. So it must be pints I can double stack, not quarts, which makes sense. It didn't look, I'm sitting there going, am I sure I can do that? Anyway, I was saying to Darryl that I've had a lot of empty jars on my shelves for the last couple of years because I just haven't done a whole lot of canning. And a lot of that has been the kitchen situation. It's just a little untenable. Washing jars and canning has been complicated by the state of the kitchen, but we've actually got some help coming on Monday, so I'm crossing my fingers that we can get something done about the roof, and once the roof's done we can try and reorganize the kitchen. Now, reorganizing the kitchen means that it's going to be unusable for a couple of days, so towards the end of the month is the best time to do that, because we can just use all the stuff that I've prepped as food for that period of time. So we'll see how we go. All right, I have my standard steam canner here to do the other 5 bottles. I put 7 in there that were the stouter ones in the bottom layer, because I was going to put these on top of them. It's not going to work. I don't know why I thought I could. I don't know. But we've got these 5 here. So this water is warming up in the bottom. I'm going to turn this down just slightly because we don't want to bring it up too fast. And I haven't used my steam canner in a while, so I'm just going to clean the lid. So as per usual, the inside is clean. Of nearly everything I ever use, that's the case. But the outside just leaves a bit desired. So the whole untenable thing with canning and stuff is like, I bought myself a secondhand laundry tub. And the idea was that the laundry tub could be set up in my kitchen to wash jars and stuff in, because a standard size sink is just like washing something like this or a canning pot in a standard size sink. It's challenging. Anyway, this is a Fruit Saver steam canner. I haven't used this in a while on the channel. It has a little dial on the top with different colours. Light green, mid green, dark green for my altitude, because I am over 1,000 feet. I need to get it into the dark green, and once it's in the dark green, that's when I start my timer. So I've got the buffalo going as well. I'm waiting for that to start steaming. Once it steams, I start the timer. Once this hits the dark green, I start the timer. They will go at different times. This is faster, but doing multiple batches in it isn't always the easiest thing in the world, because the product isn't boiling hot. And so in between batches, I have to let it cool down enough to take the lid off it, and then I have to tip some of the water out, put cool water in it, make sure that the tray isn't too hot so I don't shock the jars and things like that. So I tend to try and do one big batch in one of the canners rather than doing multiple batches in this. This is just good for a small batch of things. But anyway, we're going to use both of them today, get it to the dark green, and then it'll be done. Now, I've had a Google, and nearly every barbecue sauce recipe is in pint jars, which makes sense because normally you'd have it in a pint jar. Like a quart jar is a lot for a barbecue sauce, but 20 minutes for a pint jar. So I'm going to do 25 minutes for quart jars. It should be perfectly fine. It is a high acid. All the ratios are correct. There should be no reason that a quart jar cannot be canned in these. But again, you know, pint jars are approved and better if you want to follow the rules. I'm not real good at following the rules as such, because that's the kind of the way I cook. So I follow the rules of, like, there's some weird canning rules out there. Things like when you're canning a soup, you're only supposed to put like half solids and the rest is liquid. Yet if you're canning like an entire jar of chicken or an entire jar of carrots or an entire jar of potatoes or whatever else, you fill the jar with product. So why, when it's a soup, do you only fill it halfway with solids and the rest is liquids? It doesn't make any sense to me. So when I make a soup, I fill a jar, because if I'm canning soup, I want a jar full of product, not liquid with a little bit of product, sort of thing. So there's a few things that I believe are a bit odd, and are stated purely because they don't want to test anything else, and that's fine. So you need to educate yourself on the rules and regulations and why they exist, not necessarily, in my opinion, not necessarily follow them to the letter, but educate yourself on why they've declared that. It's a bit like you're not supposed to can pumpkin puree because it's too viscous, and so when you're canning it, there's no guarantee that the middle of the jar is going to get hot enough to kill everything that needs to be killed in it. And I understand that concept. So I don't can pumpkin puree. However, you can can apple butter, and I feel like that's sort of close in texture to pumpkin puree, but I don't eat pumpkin, so I just go, oh well, can't do it that way. So you need to educate yourself and make your own decisions. Your kitchen, your rules is always how I've stuck with it. We actually have a canning group on Facebook, and that's one of the things, is that it's your kitchen, your rules. You need to understand the rules and why they exist, and understand the testing and why it exists, and base your decisions around that education, and then make a decision as to what you're comfortable with in your own kitchen. So the other canner is steaming, and so is this one. It's up at the dark green, just about. So I will, when this hits the dark green, I will start a timer for 25 minutes, and I am comfortable with that. Again, it's a high acid thing. It's a bit like things like the salsa and things like that. If you've got your ratios right and it's high acid, the worst that's going to happen if it hasn't been canned properly on a shelf is it'll go moldy, or it'll ferment, and you'll be able to tell. And that's the risk you take by changing your options a little bit. I don't like to play with my recipes too much, because it's a lot of effort to can things, and I don't want them to fail, because that's a lot of effort and time and resources. So you want them to work. So I'm comfortable with what I'm doing as being a correct thing that will work for me. So anyway, so this was all the tomatoes done, all the apples done. I'm sure there was something else that I wanted to get done. onions, caramelized onion jam. So I will try and do that as on a standalone videos next. I might look at making those bagels again, because caramelized onion jam on bagels is awesome. So, but yes, the caramelized onion jam is the next thing that I need to get done. And that's it for the canning for this month, I think. We'll see. And yeah, so thanks for joining me again, and I will see you on the next video.